How do you push to talk and how do you get DRE to trigger something inside the simulator? DRE is capable of sending control presses to the simulator, sending virtual keyboard presses. Let's start by heading to the controls. Instead of mapping your wheel button directly inside the simulator, you map it through DRE, which then relays a keyboard press to the simulator. Let me show you what I mean. Heading to the Sim tab, let's take one simple example of a black box where we can go up and down on the controls. I have a Xbox controller here that I'll use for this example. And you can see down and up on my controller. You can do that similarly on your wheel. In the keyboard column, you can see that it's pressing arrow up or arrow down. And the function is to select the next control or the previous control in iRacing in this example. Now, what this does is that once you click the down button, DRE will intercept this and forward a keyboard press to the simulator to trigger this control. This means that you need to match this keyboard mapping to what you have in the sim. Let's find the black box controls here and see that the next control is down arrow and the previous control is up arrow. Let's give that a go. Here we have the fuel black box open. We can simply use the keyboard. Right now I'm using the keyboard to go up and down. I will now use the controller. Again, I press the controller, DRE intercepts the controller and then forwards a keyboard press to the sim. That's how things work with iRacing right now. They can only handle a single type of controller mapping per setting. On top of all this, you can also interact with it via voice. If you wanted to go down, you can, for example, say set box down. And it will also use the same keyboard mapping here to trigger it over in the sim. I only have one controller right now in this office, but I can push another button to get this going. You can see there are now two different ways I can invoke this action. So this is how the setup works with the simulators. Now, if you want to trigger things just in DRE, for example, holding a push to talk button, you can sign it up here or the get started wizard. But doing it here, you can see when I hold down this Xbox One button, you can see that the level input meter turns when I speak. For these types of bindings, you don't have to have a keyboard mapping here set in the first place because this command stops in DRE. It doesn't need to forward the push to talk to the simulator. This is why you can easily just map a controller without having a keyboard. But you can also set a keyboard command directly on this and then use that to talk to DRE. In a few scenarios, you can see there is a darker patch here, and that actually means that this command is indeed something that you need to have a keyboard mapping for before you can assign a controller for it. And that's because the traction control internally triggers a traction control in the sim. The final tab in this view is command binds. DRE has thousands of voice commands that you can speak, but you can also assign a button to trigger this exact command. What you actually do is you go down to the commands here, and let's just say we want to map a simple greeting. We can actually right click it and press bind. And now I'll just press a random button on the controller. And now it jumps to the command binds. When I press this, it should trigger this command. So let's try that.
Hi.
There we go. We did not have to speak this command in order for it to trigger. We can still say it like, hi DRE.
How are you today?
And it all just works. I can even change the command if I wanted to, and then still trigger it.
Let's go racing.
There we go. A nice addition you can do here is to trigger multiple commands in one go. Let's just do these two, hello DRE and radio check. Let's see what happens.
Current loud and clear. DRE on the pit wall.
So it actually responds to both of them, and it simply just uses the semicolon as the delimiter. Another tip is if you wanted to notch a black box dial up by a certain number of steps, you can totally do that. You do that by multiplying it by the number of times you wanted to do it. For example, increase fuel mix by 5. You do it like this. And that's simply it for binding, mapping, and controlling DRE and the simulator.